And welcome back. It's Jason Walter here. Today, I have a very special guest. That's Jeremy Knight. He's a real estate agent based in Austin, Texas. Welcome to the channel, Jeremy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So the reason why I brought in Jeremy is I ran a poll on my YouTube channel, and a lot of people wanted to hear about what's happening in other markets other than in California, other markets I talk about, and also to hear from someone who is an active agent in that area to kind of learn from someone who has really boots on the ground about what's happening in the Austin, Texas housing market. So, yeah, Jeremy, thanks so much for joining me on the channel here. And I know that we'll get a lot of value of your insights because you are an active real estate agent in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I guess I made a video maybe about a few days ago about how the Austin housing market, you have a lot of more inventory, like a triple digit increase compared to a year ago.
Yep.
Prices are down around 15%. You're seeing decreases in home sales. And the figures that the Austin Board of Realtors shares is normally just year over year data. So it's really kind of hard to gauge what direction your housing market's going rather than like pinpointing data that often is lagging if we're talking about home sold prices, houses that sold. So just like a brief snapshot overview about the Austin housing market, what have you seen over the past 12 months and what are you seeing now?
Yeah, thanks. What's interesting is this is the stuff that I actually chart on my channel quite heavily because the Austin Board of Realtors doesn't really look at month over month data or give out that information. It's stuff that I actually personally chart. So if you look at my channel, you'll see actual charts of what's happening and that'll give people a little more clarity. But over the last year, really what happened, if we go back to 2022, being in 2022, what we saw is that the market was on fire and a lot of people are trying to get in before interest rates peaked or went up, right? And so when we hit June of last year, really the last week of May, the market just fell out. I remember putting my personal home on the market in May, and what should have gone over list price, $100,000 based on where we priced it, we sold at list price, which was still a very high list price. Don't get me wrong. But I noticed right after that, everything had trouble selling. And so we saw probably in the next 3 months that followed a 20 to 22% drop. And I've charted this. There's neighborhoods that had 30, 35% drops, and there's neighborhoods that had zero drop. We had neighborhoods that actually went up in value from the peak till probably January. So since January, and so a lot of people that you hear talking about how the Austin market's crashing. Well, the reality is it crashed May of last year, really June of last year. Since then, we've seen kind of month over month increases, but they're not the same increases where you're hearing that it's year over year positive. So what I mean is if you look at January, February, March, April, from January, we started in Austin at a median price of $525,000. We ended April at 565. So, I mean, that's a pretty good jump in that time frame. But if you look at 2022, we went from 550 in the same time frame to 640. Almost a $90,000 jump. And this year we went $40,000 jump. So when buyers are hearing this, they're hearing it's an unstable time. I think the biggest challenge Austin faces right now, and this is what I highlight in the channel a lot, is our inventory. If you look at this year compared to last year, our inventory last year, and this is what we talked about heavily on the channel, last year we were like 1,200 units for the entire market. It was unbelievably low. On average, we're usually around 5,000 to 7,000 units, depending on what month.
Right this was now, last year?
This was last year. This was January of last year. Okay. And it didn't get any better until about March. And then everybody flooded the market. Well, this year, we started out the year with about 8,500 units. That's so 1,200 to 1,800, depending on how you look at the numbers, to 8,500. That is a huge, massive increase. But inventory stayed steady over the last 3 months. Like it didn't really increase a whole lot. We went from about 8,500 to about 9,000, stayed around 9,000. And today we're about 10,500. Now, keep in mind, that's like 5 counties. And in our MLS, you can put a listing in MLS and it be in California. So we have a lot of stuff that's outside, way outside of Austin, that's on our MLS. So if you look at our actual units, it's really more about 8,500 units that are purchasable in the 5 counties when people look at the MSA. So it's not as much, but it's still a huge difference from last year.
Yeah. Is that increase in inventory, is that due to a giant surge of new listings that hit the market in the second half last year? Or is that in combination with the fact that demand dropped so quickly and because houses were taking longer to sell?
Yeah.
What was the reason for that giant surge of inventory?
So it's the inventory over time. So, there was a lot of people that just weren't ready to get their home on the market last year. And so we saw a lot of that. I mean, our market does this every year. Realistically, if you look at the numbers, we see a buildup of inventory around July. And I always tell buyers the best time to buy is around September, October, November timeframe in Austin, because that's where we see the peak drop back down.
Yep.
But here's the reasons why. Number one, interest rates went insane and prices in Austin are really high. I mean, we're way higher than the median for a lot of places. Number
Mhm.
two, we had a lot of builders that were taking forever to build product. And instead of like putting out 20 units, they would put out 5 units and have people bid on them. And so we're seeing crazy price increases because instead of putting out the 20 they put out 5. Well, there was a lot of false demand for that builder inventory. Because if you think about it, I would take a buyer to 5 different builders and I'd put them on a list on each one. So if a builder showed, well, we have 1,000 buyers, really you didn't. You had probably maybe 200, but all those people were on everybody's list. And as
Mhm.
they found homes towards the end of last year, the market kind of depleted. So inventory for new builds increasing is one of them. Here's the biggest reason I think that we're seeing so much new inventory. And it's just one thing: property taxes. We saw
Mm.
property taxes increase 56% in Austin or in Travis County last year. The surrounding counties were probably around the same, 50%, 40%. But that big of increase, imagine your property tax bill. You buy a home for $400,000 and you're expecting a $7,000 a year property tax. And now it's 11,000.
Wow. So is
Like,
that I know you're in Austin, Texas. I'm in Sacramento, California. Our property tax laws and how they were taxed is
yeah,
way different. In California, we're taxed on, well, I should say there's a cap on the amount
yep.
that
So Prop
our tax
13.
assessed value of property can increase. So you buy a home for $700,000 in 2020, that value to 700,000 can only go up 2% each year. It's
Yeah.
right. We have a cap on the amount that the tax collector can,
Mhm.
collect on property taxes. So that's great for people who have houses, that are,
Yeah.
they bought 30 years ago when they're only seeing these small increases of 2%, whereas the housing market in general is going up for like 3 to 6%. And obviously it really impacts people, it really benefits people who bought in 2020, and before that, where we saw giant increases in prices, but small increases in property taxes. So we're not seeing the people selling due to increases in property taxes in general. But can you explain a little bit? I know a lot of my viewers are in California and
Yep.
other parts of the world, really. But can you
Yeah.
explain how the property tax structure works in Austin, Texas, and maybe explain a
Sure.
little more about that? Thank
Yeah,
you.
so it's a little convoluted. So every area has a different property tax rate. So it's kind of hard to say what the property tax is for different areas or of Austin in general. So you have your base taxes of, here's what the city's base tax is, here's what the college base tax is, here's what the school base tax is. And so on average around Austin, if you didn't have any crazy MUDs or PIDs, which are utility districts, like California has a Melrose, right? So what we
Hmm.
have what's called a PID, very similar. So that could push your property tax base rate from like 1.92 to virtually 2.83%. So a lot of
Oh,
these
wait. So
new,
wait, hold on a second. So your average property tax rate is around 1.8, and if you have like a area where they have these PIDs or Mellaroo
yeah,
type, so 1.8 is the minimum. So
yeah,
in California, it's like 1.25%
yeah,
for an older house. But yeah, I just took me by surprise. Okay, so sorry,
yeah. So if you buy,
1.8,
yeah,
1.9% is a base for an older house,
right. And
older
so if you
neighborhood.
buy a home with a PID and it's a 2.8 tax rate, right? And you bought a home at 350 because it was affordable at 350, but a 2.8 tax rate. Well, what happens here? So here's an example. I have a property in South Austin that's a rental, and the property tax on it, the tax rate's 1.79. So I have a very low tax rate for Austin. So what happens every year is that Austin goes, or Travis County will go around, and this is every county, and they'll go, okay, based on our metrics, your home last year was worth 425,000. But, and this is what happened in 2022, but we had such a big increase in home values. Your home value now is worth 550. Well, the reality is you might not be able to sell that home for 550. And this is what I'm running into with one of my properties right now. So then I have to go protest that as a investor with an investment property. I have to go protest that valuation. So I got to spend
Mhm.
time, money, and energy to say, no, my house is not worth 555. But then the tax district goes, well, the comps you gave us, even though they may be in the same neighborhood, even though they may be low, we're not going to use those comps. Basically, we don't like those comps. We're going with the highest comps possible. And that's what's happened with a lot of people, especially this year. And so what happens is you get stuck with a valuation at 550 or whatever. So even though that you couldn't even sell your home for that price right now, and that's what we're running into with that property. So every year they're going to reassess the values. And so this is probably another reason why you see so many vacant homes right now. About 50% of the homes on the market, maybe a little bit more, are vacant. A lot of that has to do with new construction, but then you have people that bought like crazy during 2020, 2021, into 2022, bought all these investment properties. And the property taxes, Travis County went, hey, we want to take advantage of this. Let's increase 56% and use the highest comps we can. So now what maybe you were making $100, $200 a month. Now that's a $500 a month gain that you're going to have to pay. So now you're underwater $200 a month. So you'd rather just sell that property. So that's partly why we're seeing so many properties hit the market as well, is because, investors are going, this doesn't make sense anymore. And Travis County really kind of shot themselves in the foot because they're preaching affordability, but then they kind of have this tax thing that makes it just highly unaffordable.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really unfortunate because I can see someone who, what doesn't matter when they bought the house, but they're seeing these giant increases in prices
Mm-hmm.
and then giant increases in their property taxes. I would imagine that not only affects investors, but
Yeah.
also people on a fixed income
Yeah.
who are
Now, if
retired, for
you're
example.
right, so if you are a homeowner that owns the home that you live in, you can get it what's called a homestead, and so that'll drop it around $40,000, and you get a cap of they can only increase it 10% a year. So that helps if you
Mm,
have a homestead. If you're an investor, so that's why we're seeing so many
mm,
investment properties at the market. So if you're a homeowner, it will cap at 10% increase, but they're going to increase your taxes every year. Same thing for an over 65 exemption. So if you're over 65, you get even more discounts. Yet
mm.
they still can raise it 10% per year. So if you're
Wow.
paying, $6,000 this year, just assume that they're going to try to raise it 10% next year. And then they're going to try
Wow.
to raise it 10% next year and then 10% the year after.
Yeah, that's significant if like comparing that to California with a 2% increase in our tax basis, not the amount of you're paying property taxes. And our homestead exemption, I think it's like 7,500. It's a
Yeah.
total joke. So you get
Yeah.
no benefit there. But yeah, 10% increase. I can see why people are going to be wanting to sell. So I imagine that could create a really big problem, I would imagine, because if someone bought in at the peak in June, let's just call it April to July last year, and their property they bought it for way over the appraised value, and then the property taxes just went up 15%, 20%, and they're like kind of scraping by. And if unemployment hits
Yeah.
harder, you're gonna have some big problems with foreclosures and stuff, I would imagine.
Uh, we could for sure. I don't. Now, a lot of people are saying that we're going to see a ton of foreclosures. I mean, I mean, let's be honest. I would be okay with seeing foreclosures because I'm an investor. I would love to buy an investment property. I would love to go stand at the courthouse and bid on foreclosures. I would love to do that. The reality is that the job market in Austin is still very strong. We're at 3.4% unemployment rate right now. We were at
Mhm.
2.9. You're seeing a lot of tech layoffs, so that will impact things. The overall cost of living in Austin isn't terrible, like just the overall cost of living. It's not terrible. It is higher than the median for the US. But if you think about a lot of the jobs that are coming to Austin, they are a little bit more higher end jobs depending on where you're going. So I don't necessarily see a huge foreclosure boom coming from Austin. And for the second reason is that Austin is the number one or number two, I think San Jose is number one, most equity rich city in the US. So even though we might have people that bought in a home, maybe 2021, 2022, they still might have a little bit of equity in it if they had to sell. Everybody before, I mean, if you bought in 2019, if you bought 2018, you're like fine with this 20% drop because you still have a ton of equity.
Yeah.
So we may see, 2024, 2025, we may see an increase in foreclosures. But I think what's going to happen in Austin is that you'll see prices drop. You'll see interest rates drop towards the end of the year. And all of these investors are come kind of feeding back into the market in Austin because right now you have so much multifamily being built. This is a problem for Austin, really, is all the developers are more incentivized to build multifamily because the city has all these subsidies now for affordable housing. So as a developer, why would I can't really don't have the same margins on building a $400,000 house in Austin because labor costs, everything else. Let's go build multifamily. So we're going to see a multifamily issue probably early 2024.
Makes sense. I mean, that's what we're seeing nationwide as well. We look
Mhm.
at the number of multifamily units under construction. It's either at or near all-time record
Yeah.
highs going back to like 1970. And
Yeah.
so we're going to see this. Obviously, every market's different, but we're going to see a glut of apartment buildings hitting the market and investors trying to rent them out. And
Yep.
so one would assume if we have this surplus of not surplus, a big increase in supply, that's going to cause rents to go down a little bit, which is
Yeah. And
frankly
that's
needed too, though, right?
right. And that's needed. And a lot of people are upset, depending on how you look at it, right? If you're an investor that bought a property in 2022 and you were using it as an investment and you were using it as a rental and now rates have dropped in Austin, if you're a renter, it's great that they're dropping. But if you're an investor that bought trying to get the highest amount of rental and now the rents have dropped, I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you the rentals that I have, I did not increase. Like I have tenants in there, and instead of trying to increase the rents on them, I said, hey, we're going to keep the rent the same this year just to keep you in there another year because I want to see what happens over the next year. Now, the second problem with rents, when people try to use rents as a reason why a market's going to crash, is that's such a lagging data. It takes a year for you pretty much to rent that home again. And so it's kind of it's a tough metric to try to use. And even like when we look at the numbers for the, June numbers, the May numbers, a lot of that's lagging data. That's stuff that happened, a month ago. And so I've made videos on my channel. Like, so here's what's happened over the last 7 days. People are like, you're only giving 7 days worth of data. I'm like, well, I'm giving you up to date data. This is like literally what's happening right now. If you don't like that data, it's fine because it doesn't fit your narrative. That's totally fine. But like this will be what you see in the next 30 days and then the data comes out. I'm telling you what you're going to see in 30 days.
Yeah, that's smart because the biggest mistake I think people can make about just kind of gauge what's happening in their neck of the woods or what's happening in Austin or nationwide is looking like the most lagging data you can look at is looking at year over year data for
Yeah.
any stat that has to do with a closed home sale, right? So we're talking about year over year numbers for home prices, for example. That's really like an indication of what happened, 1 year ago, as well as like 2 months ago when the offers was accepted.
Yeah.
So having said that, so I guess you guys have a title escrow when you guys buy a house?
Yep.
So what's the time frame when you get your offer accepted to when you ultimately get your keys to your house? How long does that take in Austin, Texas?
Usually about 30 days.
Okay. So,
Yeah. If you're doing a cash deal or you have a lender that has all their stuff together,
yeah.
I've closed finance deals in 18.
Yeah.
We've closed cash deals in 7. So,
Sure.
it just depends. So, but we're a little bit different because we actually have a paid option period. So you pay, just give you a number, like $250 for a 7-day option period, right? After the end of that option period, your earnest money is at jeopardy if you try to back out past that. So it's just something to think about, a little bit different than California.
Got it. Okay. Thanks for that. And then I'm
Yeah.
also curious too, since you're an active real estate agent in Austin, Texas, like what are you seeing for home sellers right now, for buyers you're working with as well? Are you up against multiple offers? Are you seeing
Yeah.
houses going for way we're asking, buyers waiving all their contingencies? I know talking to you a year ago
Yeah.
and the year before that, it was just insane how like offers a way over asking, waive all contingencies, and they're like 20 offers per property or something crazy, which is similar to what we saw in Sacramento too. So yeah, I'm really curious to hear what's going on now with the market there.
Yeah. So if you're a seller in Austin or getting ready to sell in Austin, if you've looked at last month's data or the month before's data, usually we look at the past 90 days to figure out where we're going to go pricing. I would price 10% below whatever you think that house would have sold for 3 months ago. So, because what's going to happen in June, we are going to see that dip come again. I'm telling you right now, based on everything I've seen, we are going to see a dip in prices come June again. So if you're a seller, I would highly recommend to price aggressively or really be cognizant of how you're pricing. And I realistically, if I'm a seller, I wouldn't put my home on the market after this week. So this week is the last week of May. I would not put my house on the market after this week. It's just not going to be worth it. If you're a home buyer right now, what we're seeing is multiple offers. We're still seeing multiple offers on homes that are priced right, homes that look good, and homes in the right condition and right area. We're still seeing, I mean, I have clients right now that are anything under 500 is a challenge to get at list price.
Yep.
Now, as you go further away from the periphery of Austin, from the center of Austin, and because we're talking about the MSA is 5 counties, you're seeing, depending on the neighborhood, you're probably seeing multiple offers. You may be seeing homes in the market for 25 to 30 days and selling probably 6% below list price.
Wow.
So, but we're still month over month higher than we were the month before. So prices are increasing, but you can't just, typically people try to price on an upward trajectory, right? Say, okay, the market's increased 10%, so I'm going to price my home 10% higher. Don't do that. Just don't do that this year. It's going to be, you will sit on the market forever and wonder where all the buyers went, especially right now, because here's what happens. Everybody's going to school right now. Buyers are going to leave the market in June. They are just going to go on vacation. Interest rates this week are going to be at 7%. They are gone. They're going to be gone. Same thing in July. It's hot. It's 105 degrees in Austin. People are leaving town.
Wow.
What happens is school starts again and people start thinking about buying homes again. But in that time, you're going to see a lot of inventory. So all of my buyers here's the thing. If you're a buyer right now looking in Austin and you find the home that meets all the criteria, that meets everything of your needs and is in the price budget, don't be afraid to buy it, especially if you're going to hold it for 5+ years. If you're one of those buyers that goes, I'm only going to live here temporarily and then rent out my house, I would be hesitant to do that, right? If you're going to live in the house for a year and then rent it out, especially since rents are a little soft right now and we don't really know where they're going to go, I would recommend you wait a few more months. And I would personally, I have 1031 we're working on right now. I'm trying to push it into October. I think September, October, November, if you're a buyer, is going to be the better time, because I really do feel interest rates are going to come back down a little bit. I know everybody's talking about the Fed, but they follow the 10-year Treasury. So if we follow the 10-year Treasury and that does drop down, you're going to see a lot of people, even more inventory, buyers coming in and getting really good deals August, September, October, November.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good point you make about June, because that's like our seasonality of our housing market. Sounds like it's the same thing in Austin, where the market tends to peak in June. Like you said, a lot of people go on vacation because their kids are out of school. They put their plans on hold for a couple of months and then revisit in August, September, October before slowing down again during the holidays. So I always tell people when they reach out to me and say, hey, I want to buy a home. I ask them about their timelines, when they plan to sell a house, and they call me up and say, hey, I want to sell it in a year. This is going to be a temporary move. I just tell them to rent, because it's anyone's guess what's going to happen in the short term. And so my advice for people, have long-term time horizons, 7 to 10+ years.
Unless you get a crazy deal, right? If it's a crazy deal where you go, okay, this property, I can get it for $350. It's going to rent for $3,000 a month in the Austin area. Property taxes are extremely low on it. So with my mortgage and everything right now, I would have, if I rent it for, my mortgage all in, I'm at like $2,200 a month. Hey, that's probably a good deal. I would probably buy that and then rent it out. But if you're like on the cusp where your mortgage and everything's $3,000 a month, you're at 3,000, no, property taxes are going to go up. So it's going to be a lot. You're going to have to try renting it for 32, 34, 35, and you're not going to be able to do that. So I recommend, if exactly what you just said, if you're a 1-year buyer to hold, I would recommend it.
Yeah, I think I was referring more to someone like buying your primary residence. Obviously, if you're an investor and it really pencils out, maybe you're putting a lot of money down and your ROI is still pretty high, then there's no reason why you would not want to purchase something if it works financially, right?
Right.
Okay. Anything you want to add? I mean, I do want to mention that you do have a YouTube channel called Living in Austin, Jeremy Knight, Living in Austin.
Something like that. Just YouTube my name, Jeremy Knight. You'll find me pretty easily.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Anything you want to add about the Austin housing market or anything in general?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest misconception is that Austin's crashing right now. I mean, if you look at all the numbers, it's kind of like every title of every video. Right now, if you're going to be buying, just know that you may be in a culture shock because you're going to be writing multiple offers to get something under contract, because the first one you're gonna be like, oh, I want to write 10% below list price. And then you get beat out or you're told to pound sand. So just know that it's not exactly how that's portrayed in the media. It is definitely moving along. I mean, we have buyers, especially if you're under 500. Like if you're a buyer under 500K, it's going to be a challenge. Buyers between 5 and $1 million, depending on where you are, you're probably a little bit better situation. And then over $1 million, I think that's probably where you're going to get a little more flexibility, right? You'll probably have buyers in that price range, but you'll have probably more flexibility. If a house is listed at 1.5, it really should be listed at 1.4, getting it for closer to 1.4 or under. So just look at the comps. Make sure you have an agent who's competent and really follows the market, because I don't think a lot of agents do follow the market. They just kind of say, oh, look, prices are up 5%. Cool, we're up. See? And they don't really look at the data.
Yeah, right. I mean, the best time to buy or sell a house is always now, right?
Yeah, it's true. Especially if you're talking to any realtor, it's always right now.
It's always right now. Best time ever.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremy, I really appreciate your insights about what's happening in the Austin housing market there. Thank you so much for joining me on the channel. And
Yeah, absolutely.
for all of you who've watched this video, please check out Jeremy. He has a great YouTube channel. 15,000 subscribers just hit a couple of days ago. So congrats on that. So yeah, Jeremy, thanks again. Thanks for joining me.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Have an awesome day, everyone. We'll see you on the next video.